One of the most interesting restaurants in New York City right now has to be Lore in Park Slope, Brooklyn. The establishment serves a variety of dishes that take inspiration from throughout the world. Everything just sounded so good, and I just had to give the place a try. Today, I'm here in my apartment just finishing up some work before I head out for my dining adventure this evening. I'm going to a restaurant called Lore. It's located in the Park Slope neighborhood of Brooklyn, and I'm very excited about it. Now, full disclosure, I was invited to this restaurant to make a video about it, and as a result, I won't be paying for my food, but I'm still going to be completely honest and open with my opinions. I think it's very important to be fully transparent in that regard. Plus, a free meal is certainly nice, but I don't go to just any restaurant. First and foremost, the place has to interest me. And there's a ton about Lore that I'm really intrigued about. First off, it has a ton of great reviews. There's a really nice mention about it in the Michelin Guide, plus there's a really great review about the establishment on Eater New York. And then when I look at the restaurant's menu, I'm really intrigued. Now, I'm kind of struggling defining what kind of restaurant Lore actually is. I mean, when you look at the menu, it's clear that there's a sort of overarching Indian influence to the cuisine, but it's just so much more than that. So Eater New York calls Lore a global restaurant. In the Michelin Guide, they define the cuisine as Indian-infused American fare. And on Lore's own website, it seems that the restaurant is a reflection of Brooklyn and the confluence of cultures that call the borough home. I mean, whatever you label the restaurant as, I think it just sounds pretty damn good, and I'm very excited about my dinner this evening. I've been looking over the menu these past few days, trying to formulate a game plan for the courses that I'll order. I'm still not sure. I think it will be a game time decision, but regardless, I am so hyped for this restaurant. So now I'm gonna finish up my work, and then later I'm gonna head out to Brooklyn and hopefully enjoy a great dinner at Lore. After a very lengthy subway ride with multiple transfers, I finally made it to Lore in Park Slope, Brooklyn. It's a small, dimly lit and intimate restaurant with a warm atmosphere. The space is in a sort of L shape with tables on one side and the bar on the other, and I was seated at the bar. Lore is the product of Chef Jay Kumar, who was born in the southern Indian city known as Mangaluru, which is also known as Mangalore. Hence, the lore at the end of Mangalore is partly one of the reasons why the restaurant bears that name. The other has to do with folklore and storytelling. In a sense, the restaurant tells the story of Chef Kumar and his life. I really enjoyed talking to him. He's a nice guy, and in addition to food, I also discovered that we share an interest in watch collecting. He noticed the Seiko SKX009 on my wrist, and this resulted in a great conversation about watches. Anyways, coming back to the food, I dove into the menu. It's clear that Lore is its own place. There's a dosa, fish and chips, and jerk chicken among a number of other diverse plates. One thing that I think some diners will really appreciate is how clearly the courses are labeled, whether they're vegan, vegetarian, or gluten-free. The restaurant really seems to cater to all. Next, I turn my attention to the beverage menu, which has a nice selection of cocktails. I decided to try the Dove cocktail, which contains Blanco tequila, peas, lime, and Faccio Bruto Centrebe. It's a nice looking drink with a strong green color and a foamy head. Flavor-wise, it was delicious. The cocktail was a well-balanced concoction that was sweet, acidic, and herbal. I really enjoyed it. First up for food was my appetizer, the roti ravioli, which contained eggplant, spaghetti squash, vindaloo sauce, and pomegranates. Now, the portion may have been on the smaller side, but the dish was absolutely packed with flavor. Quite frankly, I've never had a ravioli like Lore's. It was so unique. It was like the perfect fusion of Italian and Indian flavors, but it's really something special that can stand on its own. The pasta was perfectly cooked and it had a meaty tasting sort of filling even though there was no meat in the dish. The vindaloo sauce was so flavorful and I loved how it was punctuated with pomegranates, which lent it a pleasing textural feel. There was a little spice to the course, but nothing too dramatic and overwhelming. The ravioli was an absolute pleasure to consume from my first bite to my last. Like everyone, I love good food, but I really appreciate the dishes that stand out and are memorable. Lore's ravioli is certainly one dish that I won't forget. With my starter finished, it was now time for the main course. I went with the Sea Bream Som, which contained butterhead lettuce, mint chutney, hot red chutney, and a daikon slaw. Som is a Korean dish, and the word itself means wrapped. The idea is that one would take a piece of lettuce, wrap the protein, and add the other condiments to create a delicious handheld bite. This was exactly what I did, although I held off on the sauces at first to fully experience the flavor of the fish, and it was some fine flavor indeed. I absolutely loved the sea bream. It was perfectly cooked and nice and flaky, but it was the delicious spice rub on the fish that took it to another level. Simply put, it was perfectly seasoned. Combining the savory fish with the mint and pickled daikons and a lettuce wrap made for a great bite. While Lore's dish may be inspired by the traditional Korean example, some of the elements on the plate are a bit more diverse. It was the pair of chutneys that most strongly displayed an Indian influence. Both of the chutneys were fantastic on their own, but when combined with everything else on the plate made for one truly memorable dish. While the hot red chutney may sound spicy, it was actually pretty tame but had a remarkable flavor. I loved the mint chutney as well, which provided a wonderful freshness to the course. Overall, Lore's Som is a complete success. It's well balanced, has a variety of flavors, and just tasted pretty damn good. Accompanying my main, I enjoyed a side dish of the Brussels sprouts. Now, unlike my first two dishes, there was really nothing unique or innovative about this course, but what it was a very tasty and satisfying plate of Brussels sprouts. I first squeezed a bit of the lemon over the vegetables for some acidity and then dove right in. The Brussels sprouts were perfectly cooked with a nice and tender center and a pleasantly crispy and caramelized exterior. The plate was perfectly seasoned, although my last bites on the dish felt a little too salty, but that was probably the result of the fact that those Brussels sprouts were on the bottom of the dish and were likely to absorb more of the salt. Regardless, that was a delicious side dish and it paired very nicely with my som. After finishing both courses, it was time for dessert. Just like Lore's regular menu, the dessert list had some very unique offerings. I went with the semolina pudding with caramelized banana and rose ice cream. The dish looked simply beautiful and incredibly appetizing, and I couldn't wait to try it. While the dessert certainly had a good look, it thankfully had a delightful flavor as well. All of the components of the dish just worked. The semolina pudding had a pleasant texture and was a nice sort of bed for the caramelized bananas, but it was the rose ice cream that impressed me the most. I think rose can be a pretty tough flavor to get right. I've had some dishes that were just overwhelmed by the amount of rose, resulting in a sort of cleaning product-like taste. Fortunately, Lore's dessert was expertly balanced, which allowed the rose ice cream to really complement the semolina pudding and the bananas. I also liked that it just wasn't an overly sweet dessert. As I said before, it was perfectly balanced. It was definitely a fine way to end a very good meal at Lore. After finishing, it was time for the bill. My total came to $97 before the nearly 9% sales tax was added, but once again, my meal was complimentary. I did, however, leave a $20 tip for the excellent service that I experienced that evening. When I stepped outside of the restaurant, I was incredibly happy and satisfied. I just finished at Lore. Wow, that was an absolutely excellent meal. Everything I ate was so good and so unique too. I just love that food. There are so many things on that menu that I would have loved to have tried. I don't know if I have a favorite dish. Everything was just so tasty. Maybe the ravioli, because that was like the first thing I ate, and that just kind of introduced to my mind that I was someplace that was very unique. To me, there's just really not many restaurants like Lore. I mean, it's a place that stands on its own. It really is a destination restaurant. In summation, I loved all my food and I will definitely be back. Lore is without a doubt a must visit. And now I have one hell of a long journey back to my apartment in Astoria, Queens, but Lore is the kind of restaurant that you make a journey for, and I will definitely be back to Lore.